My sister humiliated me in front of everyone, after I'd risked everything, including my own safety, to protect her from years of abuse. So I cut her off and never looked back. Now, 3 years later, she's standing at my door, begging me to let her in. Growing up, it was no secret that my parents always preferred me over my little sister, Patricia. It broke my heart. The messed up part? I didn't even realize it until I was about 9. It was Christmas, and all the gifts were neatly lined up under the tree, bright paper, shiny bows, little name tags with my name on every single one. Then I got to the last box and something hit me. Every single present was for me. I looked around and asked, "Wait, where's Patricia's stuff?" That's when they motioned toward a black garbage bag shoved in the corner of the room. I'll never forget the look on her face. Her eyes welled up, but she still pulled it open. Inside? Just an envelope. A list of ways she could improve her academic performance. I was 9 years old, but even then I knew that wasn't right. "This isn't fair, Mom," I said. "Patricia deserves a real gift." But before I could finish, she snapped, "Shut the F*** up." My dad jumped in, yelling loud enough to shake the walls. "Don't you dare tell me how to raise my kids." But once they turned their backs, I went over and wrapped my arms around Patricia. We spent that Christmas morning sneaking off to play with my toys, just the two of us. That moment pretty much set the tone for the rest of our childhood. To our parents, Patricia was always the problem. The black sheep. If she skipped a chore or accidentally slept in on a Saturday, she got punished hard, ignored for 2 full days or stuck eating dry toast for a week. I never followed those rules. Whenever I could, I'd sneak her food or talk to her in whispers behind closed doors. And when she was 15 and secretly started seeing a guy, I kept my mouth shut. She trusted me, and there was no way I was gonna break that trust. But then one night, she knocked on my door, her face soaked with tears. She pulled out a pregnancy test, those cheap ones you buy at the drugstore, and there it was, 2 solid pink lines. My brain went straight into damage control mode. I told her we'd go live with our Aunt Jennifer for a while. I said I'd take the fall, pretend I was the one who got pregnant. She didn't get it, not really, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that she felt safe. That night she curled up in bed next to me, and the next morning I faked tears and told my parents, "Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant." My dad's face twisted with rage, he looked like he might hit me, but then his eyes dropped to my stomach, and he backed off. "My mom?" She scoffed. "Told you Patricia was a bad influence on her," she said, shaking her head. "We'll be out of your way in a few hours," I told them. "We're going to stay with Auntie Jennifer." "Damn right you are," Dad said, barely looking at me. We packed in a blur, tossing clothes into bags, calling an Uber before they could change their minds. In the car, I looked over and saw faint marks, thin barcodes, on Patricia's wrist. My heart dropped, but I didn't say anything. I just sat there, quiet, trying to hold it all in. When we got to Aunt Jennifer's, Patricia couldn't stop crying. There was no hiding it. We told her everything. But instead of freaking out or calling our parents, Aunt Jennifer wrapped us in a hug. "I've always known something wasn't right over there," she said softly. "I was just waiting for you to come to me." I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. I knew I'd made the right call. Over the next couple of weeks, Patricia had a safe, legal abortion. Aunt Jennifer managed to smooth things over with our parents just enough that they let us move back in. But when we returned, something I never saw coming happened. Patricia became the new favorite. The family photo wall that once had a balance of everyone? It was now plastered with smiling shots of Patricia, half of which I'd never even seen before. At dinner, she got hot, fresh meals. Me? I was stuck with expired leftovers or scraps no one wanted. And honestly, I was okay with it. I thought, at least she finally gets to feel loved, even if it costs me a little peace. But then she turned on me. Anytime our parents dragged out the old "you ruined your life" speech about me and the fake pregnancy, Patricia would chime in. It's funny how I'm the younger one, but I'm clearly more mature, she'd say, giggling like it was some inside joke. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was just trying to keep up appearances. But then came Thanksgiving. Everyone was there, extended family, neighbors, even people I didn't recognize. Patricia tapped her glass with a fork and stood up, all proud and sweet. I just want to thank Mom and Dad for raising me to be so responsible and smart. I'm really glad I didn't end up like Mary over here, she said, pointing straight at me. The whole room chuckled. She kept going. Seriously, imagine throwing your whole life away just 'cause you couldn't keep your legs closed. My mom was laughing so hard she nearly choked on her drink. I wanted to say something, anything, but then my dad leaned in and whispered, barely loud enough for me to hear, "Don't even think about it." So I stayed quiet. Swallowed my pride. Watched the house empty out while people patted my parents on the back, telling them what an amazing job they'd done raising Patricia. As if I hadn't been the one to raise her. That night, I made a decision, I'd play the long game. A few days later, the doorbell rang. It was CPS. I'd made an anonymous report, laying out every twisted thing my parents ever did to Patricia. When they sat me down for an interview, I held nothing back. I told them everything. No filter, no hesitation. I hoped they'd take Patricia or me, or both of us, out of that house. But instead, they just nodded and said they'd be back for a surprise visit. The second that door shut, I knew I was in trouble. My parents had overheard everything. I still get nightmares about what happened next. My dad's face turned this deep, terrifying shade of red. His eyes bulged, fists clenched so tight I could see every white knuckle. My mom stood frozen, her expression blank and cold, the kind of look that always came right before something awful. I backed up against the wall, heart pounding so loud I could feel it in my throat. "You ungrateful little." Those were the first words out of my dad's mouth, and weirdly, he wasn't yelling. His voice was flat, controlled, which somehow made it 100 times scarier. That kind of calm always came right before something violent. He looked at me like I'd just spat in his face. "After everything we've done for you." I nearly laughed out loud. Everything they'd done? What, like stuffing me with gifts while they emotionally starved Patricia? Or treating me like the second coming while dragging her through hell? But I kept quiet. I wasn't about to make things worse. I hadn't lied to CPS, not one word of it. And now I was paying the price for telling the truth. My mom started walking toward me slowly, like she was trying to intimidate me with each step. "You've always been a letdown," she said, her voice dripping with disgust. Which was rich, considering she used to call me her pride and joy when it suited her. "We gave you the world," she went on, "and this is how you show your gratitude?" I eyed the stairs, trying to figure out if I could make a break for it. But Dad was already standing there, like a guard dog, daring me to try. And Patricia? She was nowhere to be seen. Probably hiding in her room, and honestly, I didn't blame her for that. "Go to your room," Dad finally said, with this quiet menace in his tone. "We'll handle you later." I didn't wait for a second invitation. I rushed upstairs, heart pounding, and locked myself in my bedroom. I knew that lock wouldn't stop them if they really wanted in, but it made me feel just a little safer. My hands were trembling as I grabbed my phone and fired off a text to Aunt Jennifer. CPS came. They heard everything. Parents found out. Please help. She replied within seconds. Stay calm. Don't provoke them. I'll be there in the morning. But the idea of waiting until morning felt impossible. I sat on my bed like a coiled spring, every muscle tense, listening to the chaos unfolding downstairs. I couldn't make out exact words, just the rise and fall of shouting, and the occasional thud of something being slammed down. Then I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. My breath caught. They didn't stop at my door, they kept going, and I heard my dad's voice through the wall. She's just bitter, that's all. She's always hated how we love you more. I pressed my ear to the wall. I couldn't hear what Patricia said, but whatever it was, it made them laugh. That laugh hit me like a punch to the gut. Had she really flipped on me? After all the nights I held her while she cried, after I tanked my own future to cover for her? Was she really laughing with them now? I didn't sleep. Not a second. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, half expecting them to kick down my door. Morning finally crept in, and I waited until I heard footsteps and coffee mugs clinking before I dared open my door. I made a dash to the bathroom, relieved I hadn't run into either of them. I did my business and crept back toward my room, only to find Patricia standing outside my door, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She shoved past me and slammed the door behind her. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she snapped. I just blinked at her. "Excuse me? Why would you tell CPS all that crap?" she hissed. "Are you trying to blow up everything?" I stared at her, disbelief washing over me like a cold shower. "You can't be serious. After everything they did to you?" She avoided my eyes. "They're different now. They're good to me. You're just mad 'cause you're not the center of attention anymore." I felt my heart twist. Was this really happening? Jealous? I said. "I faked a pregnancy so you wouldn't get kicked out. I stood between you and them when no one else would. And now you're accusing me of being jealous?" She didn't answer right away. Her face was hard, but her eyes were full of fear. Or maybe shame. Or both. Then we both froze. A knock at the front door. I heard the switch flip in my mom's voice, syrupy sweet, company mode, and then a familiar voice I'd been aching to hear, Aunt Jennifer. Relief hit me like a warm blanket. "That's Aunt Jennifer," I whispered. "She's here. She's gonna get us out." But Patricia's eyes went wide with panic. "You called her?" she whispered, furious. "Do you want Dad to kill you?" "He's not touching me while she's here," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Come on. Let's go downstairs." But Patricia shook her head. "I'm not going with you. You're trying to ruin everything." And just like that, she turned and walked out, leaving me alone. I took a deep breath and headed downstairs, my knees weak. Aunt Jennifer was sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch, a cup of coffee untouched in her hands. My mom sat across from her, all polite smiles, while Dad lingered in the corner like a storm cloud waiting to burst. When Aunt Jennifer saw me, her expression softened for a moment, but she kept it neutral. "Mary, sweetie," my mom said in a voice so fake it made my skin crawl. "Look who decided to drop in for a little visit. Isn't that lovely?" I nodded, not trusting myself to open my mouth. Aunt Jennifer gave a polite smile, then said, "I was thinking, maybe the girls could come stay with me for a few days. It's spring break. I'd love some company." My mom's eyes narrowed slightly, even as she kept smiling. "That's a generous offer, but we already made plans as a family." Before I could chicken out, I said, "Actually, I'd really like to go." The air in the room shifted. My dad's eyes locked on me, his jaw tightening. I braced for him to say something, anything. And then Patricia came skipping down the stairs like she didn't have a care in the world. "Aunt Jennifer," she beamed. "What a surprise." Aunt Jennifer looked from me to her, sensing the weird vibe instantly. "I was just saying it might be nice if you two came to stay with me for a few days." "That sounds great," Patricia said quickly, but then looked at our parents. "But Mom and Dad were gonna take me shopping this weekend. For new clothes." I stared at her in disbelief. Clothes? She was choosing a trip to the mall over getting out of this nightmare? But then I saw it, that careful shift in her posture. The way she subtly moved just a little farther from Dad. That wasn't loyalty. That was fear. She was doing what she had to do to stay on their good side. "Well," Aunt Jennifer said gently, "maybe just Mary, then?" My dad cleared his throat. "Actually, Mary's grounded. She's been telling some very serious lies about this family." Aunt Jennifer raised her eyebrows, and I could see the suspicion beginning to form in her eyes. "Is that so?" she said, her tone cool but pointed. "It's not a lie," I said, louder than I meant to. But my voice held steady, and that surprised me. Everything I told CPS was the truth. The room went still. Mom's fake grin disappeared like it had never existed, and Dad started to rise out of his chair, stopped himself halfway, fists clenched on the armrests. Aunt Jennifer stood up, calm but firm, her shoulders squaring as she faced them. "I think," she said slowly, "it would be best if Mary came with me for a bit. Give everyone a chance to cool off." "She's not going anywhere," my dad barked, not budging an inch. But Aunt Jennifer wasn't asking. She stepped closer, and even though she wasn't quite as tall as him, the way she looked at him, level and unshaken, made her seem 10 feet tall. "John," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet, "this isn't up for discussion. Mary's coming with me. Today." The air felt electric. I held my breath, watching his face turn a deeper shade of red. For a second, I thought he might actually swing at her. But then something shifted behind his eyes, and he backed off. "Fine," he spat. "Take her. She's been nothing but a damn headache anyway." Relief crashed over me like a wave, and I ran upstairs without a word, tears threatening to spill as I shoved clothes into a backpack. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then Patricia appeared in my doorway. "You're really leaving?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. I stopped packing, looked at her. "Come with me," I said, my voice cracking. "Please. Aunt Jennifer will protect both of us." She shook her head. Her eyes were glassy. "I can't. You don't get it." "Then help me get it," I pleaded. She checked over her shoulder, then stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "Dad said if I don't play along." "He'll hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "Said he'd make it look like an accident." The air left my lungs. "What?" "I didn't mean what I said at Thanksgiving," she whispered. "Or the stuff after. I was trying to push you away. I thought, if I acted like I hated you, he'd leave you alone." A tear slid down her cheek, and her shoulders started to shake. "He's so mad now, Mary. I don't know what he's going to do." I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around her, pulling her in tight. She felt small. Fragile. "Come with me," I whispered, holding her close. "We'll figure it out together." But she pulled back and wiped her eyes. "I can't. Just go. Be safe." I stared at her for a long moment. Then I zipped up my bag in a fog and followed the sound of Aunt Jennifer's car keys jingling from downstairs. She was already at the door. My parents were standing nearby, Mom with her arms folded, cold as ice, Dad still simmering, his jaw clenched tight. "We'll see you soon, Mary," Mom said, her voice like a blade. There was no warmth behind it. Just a threat wrapped in sugar. I didn't answer. I just walked out beside Aunt Jennifer, feeling my dad's eyes drilling into my back the whole way to the car. I didn't breathe until we were pulling away and that house started to shrink in the rearview mirror. "You okay?" Aunt Jennifer asked gently once we got on the highway. That was the end of my composure. I broke down, sobbing harder than I ever had. Every ounce of fear and tension from the past 24 hours just came pouring out. Through the tears, I told her everything, how I'd pretended to be pregnant, how Patricia had changed, and finally, the thing that scared me most, the threat Patricia said Dad had made. By the time I finished, Aunt Jennifer's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "We have to get Patricia out of there," she said, firm and sure. "But she won't come. She thinks staying's the only way to keep me safe." "Then we'll go back to CPS," she said. "This time with everything you've told me. They have to do something." We called as soon as we got to her house. But it wasn't that simple. The CPS worker was sympathetic, but clear, without hard evidence, photos, recordings, witnesses, they couldn't force Patricia out. Especially since, during the initial visit, she'd told them everything was fine. So what? I said, panic tightening my throat. We just leave her there? No, Aunt Jennifer said, determined. But we've got to be smart. This isn't over. For the next few days, I stayed with her, jumping every time the doorbell rang or the phone buzzed. I kept texting Patricia, trying to check in. Most of her replies were short, robotic. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Stay away. Aunt Jennifer made 2 more visits to my parents' house, to get more of my stuff, she said. But really, she was trying to get Patricia alone. It never worked. My parents hovered like guard dogs. They didn't give her a single moment out of their sight. A week passed. Then 2. I started going to school again, taking the bus from Aunt Jennifer's place. I saw Patricia in the hall sometimes, but she wouldn't look at me. She'd turn the other way, walk fast, keep her head down. Every time it happened, it felt like a fresh crack in my chest. Then one morning, about 3 weeks after I left, Patricia wasn't at school. I texted her. No reply. I called the house. No answer. By lunchtime, I couldn't sit still. I couldn't think. My stomach was twisted into a knot so tight I felt sick. After school, I made a split-second decision and took the bus back to my old neighborhood instead of Aunt Jennifer's. I had to know if she was okay. As I walked up the street, I saw Dad's car was gone, but Mom's was still in the driveway. That alone sent a chill through me. Mom never stayed home alone if she could help it. I crept around the back and used my old key to quietly slip in through the kitchen. The house was dead silent. No TV, no voices, not even the hum of conversation. Patricia? I called softly. Mom? No response. I crept toward the stairs, my heart hammering so loud I could barely hear. Patricia's room was empty. The bed made everything in place like she hadn't been there in days. My old room looked exactly the same. Untouched. Like a photo of a life that didn't exist anymore. Then I came to my parents' bedroom. The door was closed. I hesitated, then slowly turned the knob. Mom was lying across the bed, eyes glassy, staring blankly at the ceiling. An empty pill bottle was on the nightstand beside her. My heart stopped. For one horrible second, I thought she was gone. But then her eyes blinked, slowly, and she turned her head. Mary, she slurred. What are you doing here? Where's Patricia? I asked, trying to stay calm, though panic was clawing at my throat. Gone, she mumbled. Your father took her. Said they needed time. My blood ran cold. Where did they go? When are they coming back? She shrugged, her eyes drifting closed again. Cabin maybe. He's been so angry lately. The cabin. Dad's old hunting cabin. Tucked up in the mountains, 2 hours from town. Isolated. No neighbors. No cell service. A chill raced down my spine. I had to get there. I had to save her. The cabin was out in the middle of nowhere, miles from the nearest soul. A place meant to be forgotten. I backed slowly out of my parents' bedroom, already pulling out my phone. No signal. Of course not. That room had always been a dead zone. I bolted downstairs, hoping the landline still worked, but the cord was dangling, ripped straight out of the wall. My chest tightened. Panic surged. I tore out the front door and sprinted down the block, not stopping until the signal bars flickered back to life. The second I saw them, I hit call. Aunt Jennifer picked up on the first ring. Mary? What's going on? Slow down, where are you? I'm at my parents' house. But Patricia's not here. Dad took her to the cabin. Mom's still here, but she's out of it, like, sedated or something. I think he's going to hurt her. A beat of silence. I'm calling the police, Aunt Jennifer said, her voice sharp with urgency. Stay put, I'll come get you. There's no time, I said, already turning back toward the house. The cabin's 2 hours out. I'm taking Mom's car. Mary, no. You don't even have your license. But I was already hanging up. Inside, I grabbed Mom's purse from the counter and fished out her keys with shaking hands. I'd driven a few times, once with Dad yelling instructions, and once more calmly with Aunt Jennifer. It wasn't ideal. But it was enough. I started the car and backed out carefully, forcing myself to breathe. I kept to the speed limit, white-knuckling the wheel the entire way. My phone kept buzzing in my lap, probably Aunt Jennifer, probably the police, but I couldn't afford the distraction. Not now. Just stay on the road. Don't get pulled over. Don't crash. The sun was setting by the time I made it to the mountain road. Dust kicked up behind the tires as I turned off the pavement and rolled onto the gravel path that led to the cabin. I killed the headlights and parked a few 100 feet back, half hidden among the trees. His truck was there, parked right out front, exactly where I'd hoped it wouldn't be. Staying low, I crept through the trees until I could see the windows lit up. His voice carried through the night air, low, angry, pacing. I couldn't make out all the words, but the tone said enough. I circled behind the cabin, climbing onto a rock to peek through the narrow bathroom window. The cabin hadn't changed. One big room, a couple of old chairs, a wood stove. Patricia was curled up on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees, trying to vanish into herself. She wasn't hurt, at least not visibly, but her face was ghost white. Dad was pacing. Angry. Animated. His hands moved in sharp, angry gestures. Your sister's big mouth ruined everything, I heard him mutter. Now CPS is crawling around. Watching us. You think I can just sit around and wait for them to take everything away? Patricia didn't say a word. His voice dropped lower. That means no more mistakes. No more evidence. My stomach dropped. Whatever he was planning, it wasn't just a scare tactic. He was preparing to erase proof, erase us, if he had to. I stepped back from the window, heart pounding in my throat. I had to get Patricia out. But how? I wasn't strong enough to fight him. And I had nothing, no weapon, no plan. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, making me flinch. A text from Aunt Jennifer. Police on their way to the cabin. ETA 30 minutes. Stay hidden. Don't go in. 30 minutes felt like a lifetime. What if Patricia didn't have 30 minutes? I crept toward the front, hoping I could find a way inside. The main door would be locked. But I remembered, years ago, Dad had kept a spare key hidden under a fake rock near the porch. I knelt by the steps, fumbling for the right stone. And that's when the front door creaked open. I froze. Dad stepped out onto the porch, a cigarette already in his hand. I pressed myself into the shadows beneath the porch rail, barely breathing. He lit the cigarette and took a long drag, then called back into the cabin. I'm gonna check the truck. Stay put. He walked past me, maybe 5 feet away. I didn't move. Not an inch. As soon as he reached the truck and started rummaging through the bed, I made my move. I bolted up the steps and slipped through the open door, closing it quietly behind me. Patricia's eyes widened when she saw me. Mary, what? Quiet, I whispered, grabbing her hand. We have to go. Right now. She stared at me, stunned. Then nodded and got to her feet. We were halfway to the back door when we heard heavy footsteps returning across the porch. Hide, Patricia breathed, pushing me toward the bathroom. I slipped inside and eased the door almost shut, just wide enough to see through the crack. Dad came back in, something coiled in his hand. Rope. My stomach turned. Where were you going? He asked Patricia, voice low but loaded. Nowhere, she replied, her voice too calm. I just needed to stretch my legs. He watched her for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. Sit down. We need to talk. Patricia returned to the couch. Her eyes flicked, just once, toward the bathroom. He dropped the rope on the table and sat opposite her. "You know I love you," he said, and it made my skin crawl. "Everything I've done, it's all been to make you stronger. Tougher. You've got to understand that." She gave him a silent nod, her face unreadable. I recognized it. That was survival mode. "But your sister doesn't get it," he went on. "She's poisoned everything. Now they're all against us. CPS, the police, Jennifer. They won't stop until they rip this family apart." Patricia's voice was quiet. "So what happens now?" He leaned forward and took her hands in his. "We start over. Just you and me. Somewhere new. A clean slate. He's planning to run." My heart pounded. I couldn't let him disappear with her. If they left, she'd vanish. And no one would find her. I looked around the bathroom, nothing but towels and a toothbrush. Then, through the crack in the door, I saw it. Dad's hunting rifle. Propped against the far wall. I'd never held a gun before. Never even touched one. But maybe I wouldn't have to fire it. Maybe just pointing it at him would be enough. Outside, sirens started to wail, faint but growing louder. It was now or never. My dad heard the sirens too. His head whipped toward the window like a wild animal catching scent of danger. "What the hell," he muttered, stalking toward the front of the cabin. He yanked the curtain aside, scanned the trees, then spun around. "Did you call someone?" he barked at Patricia. "No," she said quickly, voice trembling. "I swear I didn't." He stared at her, eyes narrowed. Then something shifted in his expression. His gaze slid toward the bathroom door. "Is someone else here?" Before Patricia could say a word, he was moving. His boots thudded across the wooden floor as he marched straight toward me. I backed up until my spine hit the shower wall, frantically scanning for anything I could use, but there was no exit, no window big enough to crawl through, nothing but tile and panic. The door flew open. There he was, towering in the doorway, face twisted with rage. For a second, he didn't even look human. "You," he growled, and lunged forward. His hand clamped around my arm, his grip like iron, and he yanked me into the main room. "I should have known," he snarled. "Dad, stop!" Patricia shouted, jumping up from the couch. "Don't hurt her." But he didn't stop. His grip only tightened. The sirens were louder now, echoing through the woods like a warning bell. "You called the cops," he said to me, his voice low and deadly. "After everything I've done for you. After everything I've sacrificed." "You didn't do anything for me," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "All you did was hurt Patricia. And I was the one who had to watch it happen." His face twisted, something almost demonic behind his eyes. For a moment, I thought he was going to hit me. I braced myself, flinching away. But then Patricia was there, right between us, her small frame wedged like a shield. "It's over, Dad," she said. And there was something new in her voice. Strength. Steel. "I'm not going anywhere with you." He stared at her, stunned, just for a second. And then the rage returned, tenfold. He shoved her. She crashed into the table, sending a lamp clattering to the floor. He turned back to me, raising a hand to strike. But he never got the chance. There was a sickening crack. I opened my eyes just in time to see him fall, sprawled on the floor, blood trickling from his forehead. Patricia stood over him, chest heaving, the broken lamp base still in her hand. Her expression was pure fire. "Let's go," she said, grabbing my hand. We ran. We burst out the front door just as the police came barreling into the clearing, lights flashing, tires skidding over gravel. Aunt Jennifer's car pulled in right behind them, and the moment she saw us, she was out and running. She wrapped us both in her arms, holding us like she never planned to let go. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Neither of us could answer. We just shook our heads, still in shock, still breathing like we'd just sprinted a marathon. Behind her, police officers charged into the cabin. A few minutes later, they dragged my dad out in handcuffs, blood dried on his face, his expression twisted with hate. He looked right at us. His eyes burned. But for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink back. With Patricia beside me, and Aunt Jennifer holding on tight, I wasn't afraid of him anymore. We were free. The next few days were a blur. The cops took our statements right there at the cabin. They asked 100 questions, one after another, and I answered all of them while squeezing Patricia's hand so hard my fingers went numb. She didn't let go either. Aunt Jennifer stayed with us through all of it. Anytime our voices shook or the questions got too personal, she stepped in. Gave us a break. Got us water. Protected us, the way no one else ever had. I kept waiting for that feeling, relief, maybe. Some overwhelming sense that it was over. But mostly I just felt empty. Like my brain couldn't believe we were finally out. The cops said Dad was being charged with a laundry list of things: child endangerment, criminal threats, unlawful confinement. One officer mentioned he'd tried to disappear with Patricia. That made him a flight risk. No bail. That night, Aunt Jennifer took us back to her house. It was nearly 3 a.m. We were too wired to sleep, so we sat in our pajamas drinking hot chocolate while she made calls, lawyers, CPS, probably half the state. I remember Patricia turning to me, her eyes big and tired and filled with something I didn't recognize. "I can't believe you came for me," she whispered, like it hadn't even occurred to her that I would. "Of course I did," I said. "You're my sister." The next morning, a social worker came to the house. Her name was Marissa. She spoke in the kind of soft voice people use when they think you might shatter. She kept offering us snacks. Every 5 minutes. Neither of us was hungry. She explained we wouldn't be going back to our parents' house. Ever. Fine by me. That place wasn't a home. It was a crime scene with curtains. "What about our mom?" Patricia asked quietly, picking at a thread on her sleeve. Linda paused before answering. "She's in the hospital. She took something, but she's stable now." I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Pity? Resentment? She let it all happen. She watched him hurt us over and over and did nothing. But I remembered how scared she looked when he got mad. How she flinched at the sound of his voice. She was trapped too. Just, in a different way. "Can Aunt Jennifer be our guardian?" I asked, not even pretending to beat around the bush. "We're not going into the system." Linda smiled. "She's already started the process." The weeks that followed felt strange, like I was living someone else's life. We stayed with Aunt Jennifer while the court stuff played out. We met with lawyers and prosecutors. They all kept calling us brave. Said Dad wouldn't see the outside of a cell for a long time. Mom got out of the hospital after a week. She called the house a few times, but I never picked up. Patricia did. She'd take the phone into the guest room, close the door. I could hear her voice rising and falling through the wall, but never the words. She never told me what they talked about. I didn't ask. School was rough. Everyone knew something happened. No one knew the full story, but that didn't stop the rumors. Some said Dad tried to kidnap us. Others claimed we made it all up. That it was some attention thing. Girls I used to sit with at lunch wouldn't even look at me. Like trauma might be contagious. But there were surprises too. People I barely knew, like this girl Tanya, who I'd maybe spoken to twice, started saving me a seat. The school counselor, Mr. Joseph, gave me a permanent pass to come sit in his office if I needed a break. And my English teacher, who used to cold call everyone, just stopped calling on me. I'd sit there in silence, and for the first time, that was okay. We were learning what safety felt like. It was slow, and messy, and sometimes it hurt more than the fear ever did. But for the first time in our lives, Patricia and I weren't surviving anymore. We were starting to live. It was after gym class, just a regular day, when I walked into the bathroom and saw Patricia crying by the sink. Her shoulders were shaking, and her eyes were red. I didn't even have to ask, I already knew. Some girls had been gossiping, whispering just loud enough to be cruel, accusing her of faking everything. That kind of talk made my blood boil. My fists clenched without me even realizing it. "They have no idea what they're talking about," I said, handing her some paper towels. "They weren't there. They don't know a damn thing." She wiped at her face and gave me this tiny, sad little grin. "I know," she whispered. "Still sucks though." "Yeah," I said quietly. "It really does." "The legal stuff?" It dragged on forever, like some endless storm cloud that just wouldn't move. Dad kept firing his attorneys, trying to wriggle his way out of it all. Mom, for once in her life, did something that made sense. She filed for divorce and got her own lawyer. Aunt Jennifer stepped in like a lifeline. She took us in, got temporary custody at first, then full guardianship when Mom signed away her rights. I can still see the look on Aunt Jennifer's face the night she got the call. We were eating dinner when her phone rang. She stepped into the kitchen to answer, but her voice carried through. 10 years, she said sharply. That's all he's getting? When she came back to the table, she tried to act normal, but her face gave her away. I asked, "What happened?" She let out this long sigh and set her fork down. "Your father took a plea deal. He'll serve 10 years, maybe less if he gets out on parole in 7. Patricia's expression turned ghost white. 7 years isn't enough, she said, her voice cracking. Aunt Jennifer reached over and gently took her hand. "I know, sweetheart. But the DA said this way, you girls won't have to testify in court. And he'll be officially registered, banned from being near children for life." I didn't know what to think. There was a part of me that wanted him locked away forever, and another part that was just glad we wouldn't have to stand in a courtroom and talk about things we could barely even say out loud to each other. "What about Mom?" I asked. "She's open to supervised visits, if that's something either of you want," Aunt Jennifer said carefully. "But it's your call." "Completely." Patricia looked at me, like she wanted to say yes but didn't want to do it alone. I just shrugged. "If you're ready, go for it." "I'm not there yet." Aunt Jennifer's house felt like stepping into another world. Not because it was fancy or anything, it wasn't. But the air felt different. She had actual rules, the kind that made sense: finish your schoolwork, let her know if you're going to be late. And she never raised her voice. Not once. She didn't make us feel like burdens or disappointments. She'd stick our art projects on the fridge like they were treasures and ask about our friends like their names mattered. I'll never forget the first time I got a B on a math test. I panicked. I mean, full-on panic attack. In my old life, a grade like that meant yelling, guilt trips, maybe worse. But Aunt Jennifer just looked at the paper and said, "Want help studying for the next one?" When I told her algebra was eating me alive, she hired a tutor. No drama. No judgment. Just help. Patricia started therapy not long after we moved in, twice a week with Dr. Thomas. At first, I kept my distance. I didn't want to talk about anything, let alone with a stranger. But after a while, I got tired of holding it all in and gave it a shot. It felt weird, sitting there and spilling stuff I hadn't said out loud to anyone. But Dr. Thomas wasn't like other adults. She didn't interrupt. Didn't make me feel like I had to fix how I felt. She just listened. And when she asked questions, they made me think in ways I hadn't before. 6 months after everything blew up, Patricia walked into my room one night and collapsed onto my bed. "I saw Mom today," she said, eyes fixed on the ceiling. I looked up from my notebook. "How'd it go?" She shrugged, not looking at me. "It was strange. She cried the whole time. Kept saying she was sorry." "You believe her?" There was a long pause. "I don't know. Maybe." She seemed different. Lighter, I guess. Like she's not so scared without him around. I nodded. I didn't trust her yet, and I wasn't ready to see her either. But I was glad Patricia had the chance to decide for herself. You want to hear something crazy? She said suddenly. I used to be jealous of you. Back when they treated you like you were golden and acted like I was just a nuisance. Some nights, I used to wish I could trade places with you. I set my pencil down. That hit me hard. I always felt guilty about that, I admitted. Like maybe I did something wrong just by being the one they favored. She turned her head toward me. None of that was your fault. You were the only thing that made that house bearable. My eyes started to sting. I stuck around longer than I should have, because I didn't want to leave you alone, she said. Then she reached over and grabbed my hand. I'm glad I didn't. We didn't need to say anything after that. The silence said enough. About a year after we moved in with Aunt Jennifer, we made it official, we changed our last name to hers. Patricia's idea. I didn't hesitate. I didn't want any piece of my dad's name following me through life. When the paperwork came through, Aunt Jennifer took us out for ice cream. We took a bunch of goofy selfies holding up our new IDs, grinning like idiots. That night, I had a nightmare. In it, Dad was somehow out of prison and standing at the end of my bed, staring at me with those same cold eyes. I woke up in a sweat, heart hammering in my chest. Without even thinking, I walked straight to Patricia's room. She was already awake, sitting in bed with her lamp on and a book in her lap. Nightmare? She asked, scooting over without needing an answer. I climbed in next to her. You too? Yeah, she said softly. Dr. Thomas says they might never totally go away. But they'll come less often. Sounds awesome, I muttered. She chuckled a little. At least we've got each other. And that's what it came down to. Even with everything, the court hearings, the therapy, the sleepless nights, we were in it together. We always had been. Just last week, I graduated high school. Aunt Jennifer threw a huge party, balloons, cake, the whole 9 yards. Most of my friends came by. Even Mom showed up. We're not exactly tight, my mom and me. But we're polite. Cordial, even. There's no shouting anymore. No cold shoulders or weird tension hanging in the air. She's been clean for almost 2 years now and works at a department store downtown, folding clothes and ringing up customers. At my graduation party, she handed me a gift card and gave me this stiff, awkward hug like she wasn't sure if it was okay. Patricia's going to be a senior next fall. She's already deep into college talk, campus tours, majors, application deadlines. Lately, she's been saying she wants to go into psychology or maybe social work. I want to help kids like us, she said one day, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. And honestly, I believe she will. As for me? I'm taking a gap year. Trying to breathe a little, figure things out before jumping into anything. Aunt Jennifer keeps reminding me there's no rush, that I've got time. You've got your whole life ahead of you, she tells me, and for once, it doesn't sound like a cliché. It sounds like a promise. Every now and then, my mind drifts back to this one Christmas. I was 9, and it was the first time I felt something was off, even if I couldn't explain it. I remember sneaking Patricia the little chemistry set I got as a gift, sliding it to her when no one was watching. We hid out in our room later that night, mixing the little powders and liquids, watching colors shift in the test tubes. It felt like magic. Like maybe, for a second, we were somewhere else. Back then, I couldn't have pictured the life we have now. I couldn't have imagined getting out. Or that one day, we'd actually be okay. Yesterday, the 3 of us were out in the yard, planting flowers around Aunt Jennifer's porch. It was warm out, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin and leaves you covered in dirt and sweat. Patricia was cracking us up, telling this ridiculous story about her friend Karen's date from hell, something involving a karaoke bar, a broken heel, and a guy named Christopher. Aunt Jennifer laughed so hard she snorted, which only made the rest of us lose it even more. And right there, in that messy, joyful moment, I just stopped. I looked at them, my sister, my aunt. These two people who'd stood by me through everything. And I thought, this is it. This is my family. My real family. Somehow, against all odds, we made it.